I never thought my life would change so dramatically on a regular Friday evening at the Whiskey Room. That's what I loved about this place. Its predictability. The same dim lighting, the same jazz playing softly in the background, and the same bartender, Joe, who always knew to have my usual Manhattan ready. But that night, everything changed. I was sitting in my regular corner spot, loosening my Hermes tie after another grueling week at Goldman Sachs. The markets had been volatile, and as a senior financial analyst, I'd spent countless hours trying to keep our clients' portfolios stable. I needed this drink more than ever. The familiar burn of aged whiskey was just starting to ease my tension when I heard her laugh. It was Sarah's laugh, my wife's laugh, but it wasn't directed at me. I turned slowly, hoping I was mistaken. I wasn't. There she was, perfectly poised in her designer dress, her manicured hand resting casually on Ryan Thompson's shoulder. Ryan, her assistant at the art gallery she managed. He was at least 10 years younger than her, with that annoyingly perfect hair and Hollywood smile. My stomach churned as I watched them settle into a cozy booth near the window. I've been having suspicions for months. The late nights at the gallery, the mysterious text messages, the sudden business trips to art shows. But seeing them here, in my sanctuary, was like a punch to the gut. Ryan must have spotted me because he whispered something to Sarah, and they both looked my way. Instead of showing any shame or embarrassment, he smirked. Actually smirked. Then he had the audacity to walk over to my corner. "Mike," he said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "Fancy seeing you here." The cologne he wore was too strong, too young for him. It reminded me of something a college kid would wear. "What are you doing with my wife, Ryan?" My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking under the bar. He leaned in close, that smirk still plastered on his face. "Come on, Mike. We both know you lost her a long time ago. Too busy playing with numbers to notice what was right in front of you." He paused, then added with a whisper, "She needs a real man, not some workaholic who can't satisfy her." Something snapped inside me. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was months of suspicion finally boiling over. I didn't even think about it. My fist connected with his jaw with a satisfying crack. The next few minutes were chaos. Ryan stumbled backward, crashing into a nearby table. Sarah screamed. Joe, the bartender, vaulted over the bar with surprising agility. But before anyone could stop me, I landed another punch, and there was a sickening pop. Ryan's arm bent at an unnatural angle. "Jesus Christ, Mike." Sarah rushed to Ryan's side, cradling his head. "What's wrong with you?" The irony of her question made me laugh. What was wrong with me? I wasn't the one having an affair. I wasn't the one destroying our marriage. Security arrived. Quickly. The Whiskey Room catered to Wall Street types who valued discretion. They escorted me out before the police could arrive, more for my benefit than the establishment's. Joe slipped me my coat and whispered, "Take care, Mike. Don't do anything stupid." I drove home in a daze, my knuckles throbbing. The Manhattan penthouse Sarah and I had bought 3 years ago felt cold and empty. Wedding photos mocked me from every wall. Sarah beaming in her Vera Wang dress. Both of us looking young and in love on our honeymoon in Bora Bora. All lies. I sat in the dark living room, waiting. An hour later, I heard the elevator ding and Sarah's Louboutins clicking on the marble floor. She stormed in, throwing her Chanel bag onto the sofa. "Ryan's in the hospital," she spat. "They think his arm is broken. Are you happy now?" I stood up slowly, trying to maintain my composure. "Happy? You're sleeping with your assistant, and you're asking if I'm happy? Oh, please." She rolled her eyes, a gesture that made her look like a teenager rather than a woman of 38. "Don't act surprised. You've been checked out of this marriage for years. I've been working my ass off to give us everything we have." My voice echoed off the high ceilings. "This apartment, your gallery, those designer clothes you love so much. None of it came free, Sarah." "Things," she screamed back. It's always about things with you, Mike. When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you asked about my day and actually listened? Ryan listens. Ryan cares. I'm sure he does, I said bitterly. I'm sure he cares a lot about our money, too. Her face flushed. You don't know him. And you do? How long has this been going on, Sarah? My voice cracked slightly. How long have you been lying to me? She hesitated, then lifted her chin defiantly. 8 months, she said, and they've been the happiest months of my life. The words hit me like physical blows. 8 months. All those nights, I thought she was working late. All those weekends at art shows. All those times she said she was too tired for dinner. 8 months of lies. I want a divorce, she said quietly. Ryan and I. She trailed off, twisting her wedding ring. The 3-carat diamond caught the city lights streaming through the window. I remembered picking it out, spending 3 months' salary because I thought she deserved the best. Ryan, and you what? I prompted, my voice hollow. You're gonna run off together? Live happily, ever after. We have plans, she said, her voice stronger now. I've already talked to a lawyer. Something about the way she said it sent warning bells ringing in my head. This wasn't just about an affair. There was something more calculated going on. I walked to the bar and poured myself another drink. Does your lawyer know about the affair? I asked casually, because I'm pretty sure that will affect how things play out. Sarah's expressio flickered for a moment. Fear? Uncertainty? I couldn't tell. Then her mask of confidence returned. My lawyer knows everything he needs to know, she said coolly. I suggest you find one of your own. She grabbed her bag and headed toward the guest bedroom. I'm sleeping in here tonight. We can talk about dividing things tomorrow. As I watched her walk away, I realized something fundamental had changed. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was gone. In her place was a stranger wearing my wife's face. I spent the rest of the night in my home office, staring at our wedding photo on the desk. We looked so happy, so in love. When had it all gone wrong? Had I really been so blind? As the sun rose over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Sarah and Ryan destroy everything I'd worked for. I needed help, and I knew exactly where to start. I pulled out my phone and called my best friend Tom. He answered on the second ring, despite the early hour. Mike, what's wrong? Tom's voice was groggy, but concerned. Everything, I said, watching the sun climb higher over the city skyline. Can I come over? I need your help. Of course, man. You know my door's always open. I packed a small bag, not letting myself think too hard about what I was taking. As I passed the guest room, I could hear Sarah's soft breathing through the door. Just yesterday, that sound would have been comforting. Now it made my skin crawl. I left a note on the kitchen counter, staying at Tom's. Don't touch anything in the office. Then I headed down to the garage where my Tesla was parked. As I drove through the awakening city, I realized this was just the beginning. Sarah and Ryan might think they had the upper hand, but they had no idea what was coming. I'd spent my career analyzing risks and protecting assets. Now it was time to use those skills to protect myself. The city was starting to come alive around me. Early morning joggers in Central Park. Coffee shops opening their doors. Street vendors setting up their carts. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. My world had shattered, but I was already planning how to rebuild it. And this time, I would make sure no one could tear it down. Tom lived in a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, away from the Manhattan chaos I was used to. When I pulled up, he was already waiting on the steps with 2 cups of coffee. One look at my face, and he knew this wasn't just a minor marital spat. You look like hell, he said, handing me a steaming cup. Come on in. Tell me what happened. Inside, I collapsed onto his leather couch and told him everything. The bar, the fight, Sarah's confession. Tom listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. 8 months, he whistled when I finished. That's cold, man. Really cold. He paused, then added, but something's not adding up here. I looked up from my coffee. What do you mean? Sarah's too smart to just announce she's having an affair and wants a divorce. And what's this about her lawyer already knowing everything? Tom was a corporate lawyer himself, one of the best in New York. It sounds like she's been planning this for a while. The thought had occurred to me too, but hearing Tom say it made it more real. You think there's more going on? Tom nodded slowly. I think you need to do some digging before she serves you those papers. Did she leave her laptop at home? She had. In fact, her MacBook was still sitting on the coffee table where she'd left it last night. I've been too angry to even think about it. Check it, Tom advised. Check everything. Email, messages, bank statements. If she's been planning something, there'll be a trail. I spent the next few hours doing exactly that. Sarah's password was still the same one she'd used for years, our wedding date. The irony wasn't lost on me. What I found made my blood run cold. First, there were the emails between Sarah and Ryan. Hundreds of them, going back not just 8 months, but over a year. They'd been plotting this from the beginning. We need to be patient, Ryan had written. Make sure everything's in place before we make our move. The longer we wait, the more we can get. Sarah's reply was equally calculating. I've already started moving money to the offshore account. Small amounts, nothing that would raise flags. By the time we're done, he won't know what hit him. There were more emails, each one more damning than the last. Plans to manipulate our prenup, strategies to maximize her settlement, even discussions about how to make me look unstable. The fight at the bar had played right into their hands. But the real shock came when I dug deeper into Ryan's background. He wasn't just a gallery assistant with a pretty face. He was a con man. Using Tom's legal database access, we found articles about similar cases in Los Angeles and Chicago. Different names, but the same modus operandi. Young, charming man gets close to wealthy women, helps them divorce their husbands, then disappears with everything. Son of a bitch, Tom muttered, reading over my shoulder. He's done this before. Multiple times. My hands were shaking as I forwarded everything to Tom's secure email. What do I do now? Tom was already in lawyer mode, pacing the room. First, we document everything. Every email, every bank transfer, everything. Then we contact the FBI. This crosses state lines, it's their jurisdiction. And we need to move fast, before they realize we're onto them. The next week was a blur of meetings with federal agents, forensic accountants, and Tom's legal team. I stayed at Tom's place, telling Sarah I needed time to process things. She seemed almost too happy to have me gone, probably thinking it gave her more time to implement their plan. The FBI was particularly interested in Ryan's pattern. We've been trying to CH this guy for years, Agent Martinez told me. He's smart, leaves very little trail. But he got sloppy this time. Those emails are exactly what we need. I had to keep living my normal life, pretend nothing had changed. Every morning, I went to work at Goldman. Every evening, I met with lawyers or FBI agents. And every night, I lay awake wondering how I could have been so blind. Then Sarah made her move. The divorce papers arrived at my office on a Tuesday morning. The allegations were exactly what they'd discussed in their emails. Emotional abuse, financial manipulation, unstable behavior. The fight at the bar was presented as evidence of my violent tendencies. But we were ready. Tom filed our countersuit within hours. Not just a divorce action, but a RICO case against Ryan, complete with evidence of his previous cons. The look on Sarah's face when she was served at the gallery was apparently priceless. Ryan tried to run that night. He made it as far as JFK before the FBI picked him up. They found 3 different passports in his carry-on, along with cash and jewelry from his previous cons. Sarah showed up at Tom's house the next morning, mascara streaking her face. "Mike, please," she begged. "You don't understand. Ryan said he loved me. He said we'd be together." I looked at her, this woman I'd loved for 10 years, and felt nothing but pity. Did he tell you about the others? The other women he's conned? Or were you special? Her face crumpled as I showed her the articles about his previous victims. He's been doing this for years, Sarah. You weren't his first, and if we hadn't caught him, you wouldn't have been his last. She collapsed onto Tom's front steps, sobbing. Part of me wanted to comfort her, but that part was getting smaller every day. I've instructed my lawyers to be fair in the divorce. I told her, you'll get what you're legally entitled to, nothing more. The gallery is yours. I never wanted it anyway. But the game stopped now. As I watched her walk away, shoulders slumped in defeat, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The rage that had been burning inside me since that night at the whiskey room was finally starting to fade. You okay? Tom asked, appearing beside me with a beer. I took a long drink before answering. Yeah, I think I am. Or I will be. You know what you need? Tom had that look in his eye that usually meant trouble. You need to get out of the city for a while. My family's got that vineyard in Napa. Why don't you head out there for a few weeks? Clear your head. The idea was tempting. Cases like this took months to resolve, even with overwhelming evidence. The FBI would handle Ryan. The lawyers would handle Sarah. Maybe it was time for me to handle myself. Plus, Tom added with a grin, they've got this new tasting room manager, Ashley. She's smart, funny, and definitely not a con artist. I threw a couch pillow at his head. Too soon, man. Way too soon. But as I packed my GS for California the next day, I couldn't help but feel a spark of hope. My life had imploded in the most spectacular way possible. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't entirely a bad thing. I took one last look at Manhattan's skyline before heading to JFK. The city would always be home, but right now I needed space to breathe, to think, to heal, and maybe, though I wasn't ready to admit it yet, to learn how to trust again. Napa Valley in October was nothing like Manhattan. Instead of concrete and glass, I was surrounded by rolling hills covered in vineyards. The air smelled of earth and grapevines instead of exhaust and street food. It was exactly what I needed. Tom's family vineyard, Sterling Hills, sat on a gentle slope overlooking the valley. My guest house was small but comfortable, with a deck that faced the sunset. For the first week, I did nothing but sleep, read, and watch the clouds roll by. I avoided the tasting room, despite Tom's not-so-subtle hints about Ashley. The last thing I needed was another relationship. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. I was jogging through the vineyard one morning when I literally ran into her. She was carrying a stack of wine catalogs, and I was too busy watching a hawk circle overhead. The catalogs went flying. Oh God, I'm so sorry, I said, dropping to my knees to help gather the scattered papers. It's okay, she laughed. I probably shouldn't have been walking backward while talking to myself anyway. I looked up and felt something shift in my chest. Ashley wasn't beautiful in the polished, Manhattan socialite way that Sarah had been. She was natural real. Her curly hair was escaping from a messy bun, and she wore no makeup except for a swipe of lip balm. You must be Mike, she said, extending her hand. Tom warned me about you. I groaned. Whatever he told you, it's probably an exaggeration. So you didn't punch out a con man in a fancy New York bar? Her eyes twinkled with amusement. Okay, that part's true. I helped her up, but I'm sure he left out the part where I got thrown out and had to rebuild my entire life. Actually, she gathered the last of the catalogs. He did mention that part. He also mentioned you might need a friend out here. She paused, and maybe a good glass of wine. That's how I found myself in the tasting room after hours, sharing a bottle of Sterling Hill's finest Cabernet with Ashley. She was easy to talk to, genuine in a way I hadn't experienced in years. So, what's your story? I asked. How does someone end up managing a vineyard's tasting room? She swirled her wine thoughtfully. I used to be a corporate lawyer in San Francisco. I nearly choked on my wine. What? Yep. 70-hour weeks, corner office, the whole deal. She smiled. Then one day, I was sitting in yet another merger meeting, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt truly happy. What did you do? I quit. Walked out that same day. Drove up. Here with no plan, just a need to do something real. She gestured around the tasting room. Found this place, fell in love with it, and never looked back. Her story hit close to home. How many times had I felt that same emptiness in my own corner office? Over the next few weeks, Ashley and I fell into an easy routine. Morning jogs through the vineyard, lunch at local cafes, long conversations on my deck as the sun set. She taught me about winemaking, and I taught her about financial markets. Neither of us pushed for more. Then came the night of the Harvest Festival. The vineyard was lit with thousands of tiny lights, and the air was filled with music and laughter. Ashley wore a simple sundress and cowboy boots, so different from the cocktail dresses and heels I was used to. We danced under the stars, and when she kissed me, it felt like coming home. I should warn you, I said later, as we walked through the moonlit vineyard. I'm pretty messed up right now. She squeezed my hand. Aren't we all? The question is, are you willing to try again? I stopped and turned to face her. With you? Yes. The next morning, I woke up to news from New York. Ryan had taken a plea deal. He would serve 15 years for fraud and money laundering. Sarah had managed to avoid charges by cooperating with the FBI, but she'd lost everything: her reputation, her gallery, her friends. As I read the email from Tom, I realized something surprising. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, no desire for revenge. I just felt free. I showed Ashley the email over breakfast. How do you feel? She asked. I thought about it. Ready to move forward. She smiled. Good. Because I have a business proposition for you. The proposition was simple but brilliant. Sterling Hills was looking to expand, to modernize its operations while keeping its traditional charm. They needed someone who understood both finance and wine. Someone like me. Are you sure? I asked. This would mean leaving New York permanently. Mike, she set down her coffee cup. What's really keeping you there? She was right. Manhattan had been my home for 20 years, but now it felt like a movie set where a bad play had been performed. Here in Napa, I'd found something real. The transition wasn't instant. I spent months wrapping up my life in New York, finalizing the divorce, selling the penthouse. Tom gave me endless grief about falling for his matchmaking genius. But by the following spring, I was officially a partner in Sterling Hills Vineyard. Ashley and I moved in together, combining her artistic chaos with my minimal aesthetics. We worked hard but made time for small pleasures: sunset walks through the vines, impromptu wine tastings, lazy Sunday mornings in bed. 1 year to the day after our first kiss, I proposed, not with a flashy diamond in a fancy restaurant, but with my grandmother's ring during a private picnic in our favorite corner of the vineyard. Ashley cried, I cried, and the elderly couple who found us thought we were having a wine-induced meltdown. We got married in the vineyard, surrounded by friends and family. Tom was my best man, delivering a speech that had everyone alternating between laughter and tears. Even my mom, who had initially been skeptical about my California adventure, admitted that she'd never seen me happier. As we danced under the same lights where we'd first kissed, Ashley whispered, Any regrets? I pulled her closer, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The pain, the betrayal, the darkness, all of it had led to this moment. Not a single one, I replied. Life isn't perfect. We have our arguments, our challenges, our moments of doubt. But they're real, honest moments shared between two people who choose each other every day. Sometimes I think about Sarah and Ryan, about the life I thought I wanted. It seems like a different world now, viewed through the clear air of the valley. I learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to find what you really need. Ashley and I are expecting our first child next spring. It's a girl, and we're naming her Hope. Tom thinks it's cheesy, but then again, he just started dating a yoga instructor in Brooklyn, so he's lost all right to judge. As I write this, sitting on our deck watching the sunset paint the vineyard in shades of gold and purple, I can't help but smile. This wasn't the life I planned. It's better. Ashley joins me, her hands resting on her growing belly. Penny for your thoughts? I pull her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, sunshine and grapevines and home. Just thinking about how sometimes the worst moments in life lead us to the best ones. She laughs. That's very philosophical for a former Wall Street guy. What can I say? Wine country's changed me. The sun sinks below the horizon, and the first stars appear above the valley. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new adventures, new moments to cherish. But for now, this is enough. This is everything. In the distance, I can hear the sounds of the tasting room closing up for the night. Somewhere in Manhattan, the bars are filling up with people seeking love, success, happiness. I hope they find what they're looking for. I know I did. It just wasn't where I expected it to be. And maybe that's the real lesson in all of this. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its greatest disasters. You just have to be brave enough to keep your heart open, to trust that after the storm comes the sunrise. And maybe, just maybe, a really good glass of wine.